Thanks very much, Tim, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to all the participants in ShareCafe. Useful. Jim's given me a good introduction to talk about gold, as does the outlook for the metal. So here's a quick snapshot of Resolute. I'll try and stick to the 10 minutes. We currently own 3 gold mines, as you can see, located in West Africa. Our most significant operation is the CIMA gold mine in the south of Mali. It was originally developed by BHP in the late 1980s. It was owned by Randgold, and that's the operation where we have been working on a range of technology solutions, including automation in the new underground mine there. Last year, we acquired the Mako gold mine in Senegal. It's in eastern Senegal. It's been a great cash generative asset addition to our portfolio. For many years now, we've owned the Bibiani gold mine in Ghana, which is currently on care and maintenance. So it is CIMA in Mali and Mako in Senegal that currently completes our group guidance. You can see on the bottom left in this slide of 430,000 ounces at an all-in sustaining cost of $980 an ounce. Across those 2 operations, we have 3 processing plants. We have a sulfide processing plant at CIMA and an oxide processing plant. The sulfide processing plant processes the underground ore, and we have a range of satellite oxide feeds for the oxide plant. And then we have a separate processing plant at Mako. And underneath those 3 processing plants, we have almost 5 million ounces of reserves, which provide a significant long future. Our strategy as a company, having sold our last Australian gold mine, being the Ravenswood gold mine in the first quarter of 2020, is to be a multi-mine, low-cost African gold producer. And so considering that we produce slightly more ounces than Jim at Regis, but have a market cap which is about half the Regis market cap. Obviously, that's responsible largely in their lower costs, if you look at our cost guidance. But we're pretty excited about our growth potential, both at our existing assets and in our locations. And I'll talk briefly about that in terms of our exploration, as well as our appetite for further acquisition. And that's just give some relevance to the only other number on this slide, which is our current 1.3 billion Australian dollar market capitalisation, responding to a share price of about $1.20 on the ASX. Next slide, thanks. While we're changing, obviously, we're also listed on the London Stock Exchange, an initiative we took during 2019, recognising that there's a lot of investors in that jurisdiction who are comfortable with the jurisdictions in which we operate. COVID-19 has been a very interesting challenge for a company that's been operating in Africa for more than 20 years. We do have some experience with endemics similar. We experienced the Ebola crisis a few years ago, and that prepared us quite well for our crisis management response team. I'm very pleased to advise that we currently have no cases of COVID-19 across the company. Which is actually a bit of a surprise from where we started. All of our locations, the one that's actually been influenced the most has been our London office, which is still closed. Here in our head office in Perth, we're operating normally, and I'm really proud of the fact that our operations from a production point of view and at this stage from a cost point of view have not been impacted by our response. And that response has been comprehensive to prioritise the safety and well-being of our people. We've handled a number of challenges, and we've changed our operational focus to ensure that we're following World Health Organization guidelines in relation to hygiene, distancing, isolation. The biggest challenge for us has actually been transport for an international business, and the lack of availability of commercial transport solutions for passengers, as well as government restrictions and border closures. In relation to consumables, fuel, and all of the other shipping requirements and supply lines, they actually remain stable and consistent, and as does our ability to export product. So at this stage, we have maintained our confidence in the guidance I mentioned of producing 430,000 ounces from Mako and CIMA this year. Next slide, thanks. Similar to all companies and it's particularly important as part of our efforts through our London Stock Exchange listing to get broader support. We have increased our exposure and transparency around our commitment to sustainability, which has actually been long-term. As a miner in Africa, it's actually the basis on which we partner with local governments and local communities. This is actually a picture of our market garden activities in and around our Senegal operations, which have been very successful. And people interested in this part of our business are, as mentioned by Tim, encouraged to go to our website, and also we will be putting out increasing disclosure and a separate sustainability report as part of our next annual report. Next slide, thanks. Part of that has been a commitment to our people, and I have spoken about this a lot in technology forums around how our focus on technology and specifically automation has often been confused with in conflict with our commitment to advance and increase the localisation of our workforce. And what you can see here is how we're using technology to increase the availability and seniority of our African employees. Like a lot of gold miners and miners in emerging economies, we've often referred to the fact that 90% of our workforce are local, but hidden the fact that obviously the 10% of expats are actually in all the management positions. That's something we are actively changing at CIMA and Mako, and I'm really pleased to continue to report on that initiative, which is intrinsically linked with the efficiency of our operations, their political support, and ultimately in our ambitions to reduce our all-in sustaining costs. Next slide, thanks. Part of that is our commitment to the World Gold Council. Unlike a lot of Australian gold miners, we are a member of the World Gold Council. We participated in the subcommittees that formulated the responsible gold mining principles that all members of the World Gold Council, which consists of the leading gold producers in the world, have subscribed to. And you can again find more details of these on our website or by going directly to the World Gold Council. They form a very important basis for our operations. Next slide, thanks. Here's a picture of actually one of our satellite open pits about 30 kilometres to the south of the Syama gold mine in Mali. This is called Tabakarani. This has been an important part of our production over the last couple of years through the oxide processing circuit. And excitingly, in the second half of 2020, we're looking to update the market on a feasibility study we're doing here for an underground mine at Tabakarani. And we see this area as a potential second long-term supply of ore to our Syama processing infrastructure. And it's indicative of some success we're having on an enormous belt we control in and around Syama. We have more than 80 kilometres of a greenstone belt. And we continue to discover exciting new opportunities as well as near-term oxide deposits that we'll be mining over the next couple of years. Key elements that are also an update for 2020. I mentioned we've sold the Ravenswood gold mine earlier in the year. That were part of a comprehensive strengthening of our balance sheet. We've put in place a $300 million US revolving debt facility with a consortium of global banks. And that's provided us a very strong platform to perform as Syama and Mako generate positive cash. And that's the future platform for our growth. Next slide, thanks. So moving into some details about Syama, our focus during the June quarter, which was forecast in our March quarterly activities report, were to increase the recoveries from the sulphide plant from 75% to 80%. And that's obviously something we'll be reporting on when we publish our June quarterly activities report in a couple of weeks' time. The Syama underground mine is now operating at full capacity. It's a showcase underground mine. We believe it has some of the most efficient high technology solutions available. It's a sub-level cave. Importantly, we're seeing the propagation of the cave work exactly to plan in terms of tonnes export and particularly grade and dilution. We've got more than 400,000 tonnes of material on the ROM pad, and we've really set that mine up for a very long-term future. We've got almost 15 years of reserve mine life in front of us, and we believe that the ore body will keep going for a lot longer than that. So this is the base of our company, and it's now operating at full capacity, and we look forward to demonstrating the sustainability and the consistency of that operation, both in the June quarter, but more importantly, and on an ongoing basis. Next slide, thanks.
I'll pick up where I lost off. We were in Senegal, so back out of the WA goldfields and in eastern Senegal, and I was talking about golf, saying that the Mako gold mine is like following a great golf around a course, in that it looks like it's easy because it's they just keep on hitting pars here and the occasional birdie. So we bought this operation during 2019 and expected it to produce 140,000 ounces a year. We actually produced on the full calendar year 160,000 ounces in 2019 from this mine, and we're on track to produce another 160,000 ounces here at an all-in sustaining cost of $800 an ounce US. So at current gold prices, this is the top performer for Resolute, and we're particularly excited about the opportunity we have to extend the mine life with some of the exploration results we published last year. And we're going to publish an updated life of mine for this asset in the second half of the year, as well as increase our exploration regionally on the existing tenement package we have at Senegal. Next slide, thanks. A little bit of growth here before I come to a summary slide. One of the exciting projects we've got is back in Mali at CIMA. We're building what we believe to be the world's largest solar hybrid power station based at a mine site. For 30 years, CIMA has relied on diesel-fired power, and you can actually see in the foreground of this picture a whole series of 2 megawatt units in their chimneys. And the shed on the top right, it actually holds another series of 5 megawatt units producing around 30 megawatts of diesel-fired power. It comes at a cost, fluctuates with fuel price, but it's around 25 cents a kilowatt hour. The new power plant that we expect to be operational by the end of this year, which will be then linked to a battery and solar grid, which will be part of the rehabilitation of our historic tailings, will actually reduce that power cost by about 40% to well below 15 US cents a kilowatt hour. So it's a very exciting project from a sustainability perspective, as well as from a cost perspective. Next slide, thanks. I mentioned this when I was talking about CIMA earlier. We're also publishing a feasibility on underground mine here, and that's going to be an important part of our look forward. Next slide. Another area of growth is the exploration we're doing in and around CIMA on oxides, and we continue to publish some really exciting results here. And the important part of this is we believe that the oxide operations at CIMA have now got sufficient runway in front of us over the next 3 or 4 years to overlap with the development of a longer-term ore source for that part of our production from the underground mine at Tabakarani. Our ambition is to maintain CIMA as a 250 to 300,000 ounce a year mine for a very long time to come. And that's a key part of that story will come together in the second half of 2020 as we continue our exploration on the oxides, as we publish the feasibility study for the Tabakarani underground. And in addition to a life of mine update for Mako, that will allow us to do a comprehensive life of mine update for CIMA, and that will include the stable and ongoing operations of our new underground mine, as well as the oxide and underground potential for Tabakarani in an updated life of mine during the second half. Next slide. That brings us to the last slide of the presentation, restating our guidance of 430,000 ounces at $980 an ounce. We turn over a lot of volume on the ASX, so given that this is a ShareCafe presentation, I assume there's a lot of active punters listening in. Resolute's a high volume stock on the ASX. We've been listed here for 30 years. We are actively looking for new investors through our London listing. If you look at the share price graph, you can see the journey over the last 12 months. And I'll take 30 seconds to explain that. We acquired Mako at about the start of this graph in the middle of 2019, and that gave us a real boost. And the other thing that was driving that was the commissioning of the new underground mine at CIMA and the additional production that provided, as well as cost reduction. In September of 2019, we had a major failure of a key piece of processing infrastructure at CIMA, which is the roaster. And you can see that the next 6 months were challenged. We actually lost about 40 to 50,000 ounces of production. We needed to, it affected our ability to make guidance. It also affected the financing that we put in place and expected to refinance in the second half of the year in relation to the Mako acquisition. And so that tells the story through to about March of this year, and you can actually see the turning point. We sold Ravenswood and we structured the $300 million debt facility I referred to earlier in this presentation. And since then, I'm very pleased that we have been recovering some of the ground we lost and trying to recapture the momentum we had in the first part of this graph in the following the half year in 2019. We still believe that Resolute has a huge opportunity to re-rate. We indicated to the market in the March quarterly that we expected further improvement from the CIMA operation in the June quarter, and I'm looking forward to update the market in a couple of weeks. And that's part of our focus on delivery of our expectations. So the guidance that you can see on this slide is a key part of our focus on 2020. We believe there is an ongoing re-rate around the demonstration of that. And some other things I'd just point out, that life of mine update from Mako and CIMA will really allow us to sort of put in place a very clear guideline over the next 5 years about what to expect from Resolute. And we'd like to run from delivering on our expectations for 2020 to be really clear about what the market can expect from Mako and CIMA over the 5-year outlook. And people who participate in this call would have appreciated the sort of graphs that Jim from Regis was putting up, showing exactly what you can expect in terms of production from their mines over that sort of period. That's what we're looking to update the mine. We believe that'll drive a re-rated valuation of the company based on consistent, sustainable production and cost management of our existing operations, and particularly the opportunity, the sub-level cave at CIMA, as well as other technology initiatives, and I mentioned the power project, have to actually bring down that cost towards our expectations. So that's a summary of Resolute. Thanks very much for your interest. Happy to answer any questions, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, John. I mean, you look like you've got almost half your register owned by institutions, so it's probably a story not as well understood by retail investors, and there's a common theme to some of the questions in regards to security and the political situation. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. I mean, this slide you're showing now, we've operated in Africa for 20 of the last 30 years. So we believe we're experienced, and I think that comes through in the way we've been able to manage COVID. So like any miner, the people who are presenting today are familiar with open pit and underground operations and managing risk. We at Resolute have a very similar focus to our jurisdictional partnerships. We use our experience to manage risk, and that comes down to fiscal relationships with government. We operate in countries where we're confident in the rule of law, under clear agreements which we believe we have strong legal recourse to. We see security as a fundamental skill set, similar to safety in most miners. And so our responsibility to our workforce, to our host communities, to our government is very much tied up with our commitment to keep all of our people and our operations safe. And I think we've demonstrated that over a very long time in our operations in Africa, and we look forward to continuing to do so.